Hi everyone, it's me, Franklin, and welcome back to Comp 2160 Programming Practices. In these compressed summer terms on Fridays, happy Friday, one of the things that I like to do is to just quickly go through the learning outcomes that we covered in the week and to try to give you a little bit of a sense of how you can expect to be assessed on those learning outcomes throughout the term, and also just to give you a quick summary of the stuff that we've been doing throughout the term or throughout the week. So I've got my browser window open here. This is the course syllabus. This is the schedule part of the course syllabus that's on the course webpage. I list all learning outcomes here for the things that we've done throughout the week or that we will be doing throughout the week. And I'm going to be updating this either by the end of the day today or on Monday morning with what we're going to be doing next week. I try to keep these learning outcomes to be pretty concise. We've done a lot of different things this week. We've had effectively 2 full weeks of course material. And these learning outcomes there's quite a lot of stuff that goes into them. So I kind of, like I said, want to review what they are and how you might expect to be assessed on these learning outcomes throughout the term. The first learning outcome that we've got here is find course information on the course website. I'm not going to assess you on this learning outcome. I really just want to make sure, and this is what we did in the first class, that as a student in this class, you have a good idea of where to find things on the course webpage. So where to find things like this course syllabus document, because it describes things like how you're going to be graded ultimately at the end of the term and when assignments are due and when tests are. But I also want you to be able to find things like assignments and lecture notes and discussion forums. Again, you're not going to be assessed on this. I mean, I guess implicitly you're being assessed on it because you have to know where to find the assignment to be able to do the assignment. But yeah, you're not going to be assessed on this formally. The other 3 learning outcomes here are the ones that we've been focusing on this week. The first one here, build and execute programs from a command line environment. This is something that we did on lecture 2 and lecture 3 and lecture 4 really. And we've been doing this from 2 different perspectives. Initially, this was how do I get connected to a remote computer and how do I manage files and folders on the command line environment, so on a Linux system. This is doing things like copying files, transferring files, making directories, moving files around, renaming them, that sort of thing. From that perspective, you're not going to be assessed formally in this course. I'm not going to ask you questions about how to use a command line environment on a term test. The way that you're being assessed on this is implicitly in that you are submitting assignments on Aviary itself. So you're using that hand-in command. To use the hand-in command, you kind of have to at least minimally be able to make a folder and put files into that folder for submission. So that's how you're going to be assessed on that, is kind of implicitly in terms of being able to submit an assignment at all. The other half of what we've been doing for build and execute programs from a command line environment so far has been to use Clang to compile C programs and to use Java C to compile Java programs. Again, you're not really explicitly going to be assessed on this. You are being assessed on, can your code compile in the assignments that we're doing? So one of the learning outcomes, or one of the assessments in the rubric is the code that you've submitted with hand-in able to be compiled at all with the Clang compiler? You're going to be assessed on that part of this learning outcome in that specific way. I'm not going to be assessing you on a test about how to compile code or how to run things. That's not something that I'm going to do. So this is going to be exclusively something that you're assessed on with assignments. Find out how to run commands with manual pages. This one, you're not at all going to be assessed on through the course explicitly. Again, implicitly, you're going to have to find out how to do things like, how do I use command line programs? And you're going to implicitly be assessed on that in terms of submitting your work through an assignment, but I'm not going to ask you questions about like what to do in manual pages. That's not something that I'm really interested in assessing you on. This is more of a tool that's going to help you get through course material. We looked at how to run commands with the manual pages, but we also looked at how do I find information about functions that are available to use in C using the manual pages. So what we did with that was we were running man and then the number 3 for section 3 of the manual pages, and then the functions that we saw this time were toLower and getChar and printf. So how to find some more information about how to use functions in a C program, what it returns, what the function signature is, what libraries you need to include at the top of your program. The last learning outcome that we had from this week was recognize potentially risky programming techniques and how they differ in different high-level programming languages. This is really about how do I compare two languages? How do I compare two languages to each other as I'm going from one to the other? But then also what kinds of things can I do in one language that maybe I cannot do in another language, and why are those things risky? The main thing that we've seen with risky programming techniques so far is declaring and using variables. In C, there's no explicit requirement that you have initialized a value to that variable. So you can print a variable that hasn't been initialized yet. In C, there's no bounds checking on arrays. In C, there are no exceptions like there are in Java. Those are the main things that we've seen so far. In terms of how do we implement it safely, how do we use it safely, the main way that we've seen trying to solve some of these problems in C so far, again related to arrays, is how do I declare an array using a fixed size? So using that preprocessor directive, that number sign define, to state what the size of the array is. I mentioned this a couple times in class about passing arrays, but this is mainly related to like make sure that you're taking care when you're using something like ChatGPT or Stack Overflow, because they're going to tell you effectively the same thing. Make sure that you're passing the length of an array to a function with the array that you're passing. We had one example of passing an array to a function in class yesterday, and we didn't pass the size of the array because this one was explicitly trying to figure out how big the array is, so how long the string is. We were trying to compute how long it was. This learning outcome you're going to be assessed on in the assignment. In the assignment, we're going to be looking at how you've coded what you've coded, like making sure that you're making changes to function signatures. You're also going to be assessed on this in the context of a term test or a final exam. There will be some programming questions on term tests and final exams. We'll talk about term tests when we get closer to the term test. But you will be assessed on this in that way. So making sure that you're adhering to best practices and programming standards to a certain extent when you're doing term tests and final exams. The other way that you may be assessed on this throughout the term is to assess existing code. I might give you examples of code that have risky programming techniques, and I would ask you to tell me a little bit about those things. So that's it for this week. Again, this is kind of a whirlwind of a week. Next week is also going to be a bit of a whirlwind of a week, but we're doing great. I think that we're doing good, and I think that we are going to be able to get to the point of getting through this course. So on Monday, what I'm going to do is have a little bit of time for asking questions about the assignment. We'll get on with some of the stuff that we've been doing. And yeah, I otherwise hope that you have a great weekend, and I'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone.